packed session today. So make sure that you have a pen, pencil, something to take notes with, something to write on, and we will jump right into things here. So just quick thumbs up if you guys can see my screen okay. We'll make sure we've got that. All right, awesome. So as we mentioned today, we are speaking about really how to effectively communicate. And as you can see in these presentations, the background is always important. And it's really important for us to take a note of what we're looking at today. So you guys tell me, what is this picture of in the background? And has anybody ever done this before? You let me know. What is it? And has anybody ever done this? Joni knows what it is, or she's done it before. What is it? What do we have? You can come off mute, put it in the chat.
Water
Either way.
skiing, of course.
Yeah, rafting, whitewater rafting,
Water
exactly.
skiing. Water
Water
skiing.
skiing, could be water skiing. So, if anybody's ever done this, and we could see some people in the chat have done it as well. So, whitewater rafting, it is intense. And if you've ever done it, it's usually when you get in a boat, as you can see, you have like someone who's kind of the instructor, and you sit on either side of that raft and you're going down the river, and there's different levels of intensity for the rapids. And essentially, the person in the back of the boat tells you, hey, paddle faster, paddle softer, go this way, go that way. And the whole point is that you try to get down this river without flipping over. Some people are saying super fun, but can be intense. Joni says frightening. David's been a few times. Yeah, so it's an adrenaline rush for sure. And if you look at these two rafts, why are we looking at this when it comes down to communication and really effective communication? Well, if you look at this raft in the front, it's getting sloshed around. Somebody might be about to fall overboard. Who knows? But it's not very smooth, as you can tell. And this right here is how most people feel when they're communicating. It's always kind of jagged, kind of rough, feels like we're kind of bouncing from one thing to the next. Sometimes you have a conversation with somebody and you leave thinking like, man, what did we even talk about? Like, I don't even know what that was. And so what we want to do is really understand, how do top producers connect? How do they communicate? What's kind of the frame of reference they're looking through? And how can we start to adopt it today? Because I guarantee you, you're going to learn a few things today that you can use to adjust and become more effective in your communication. But what I guarantee is that you're not going to have to make huge changes. It's not like you're going to have to relearn how to communicate and all of a sudden think, oh my gosh, the way I've been communicating is wrong. It's not. It's just small micro adjustments, I'm sure, that we'll have the opportunity to make today. And so, what I want you to do is take some notes and start to apply what we learned today, because you can literally start to apply it while we're on this call and right after. So, first thing we have to talk about when it comes down to communication is realizing that 7% of communication is verbal and 93% of communication is non-verbal. What does that mean? People are speaking without saying anything. And we know this all the time. It's known as body language, right? But that means 93% of your messaging, both internally, how you're thinking about yourself, what you're feeling about yourself, and externally, what you're actually communicating, is done without saying anything. And so it's really important that we take this into consideration, because as we start to read ourselves in our communication, verbally and non-verbally, and as we start to read others, one of the first cues that we'll pick up on is their body language, their non-verbal communication. And so we all know this. This is naturally built into who you are as a human being, but it's really important to know this. This is another great note, too. We'll dive deeper into this as we continue on, but this is so glaring because most people in sales, marketing, business have been taught that to be an effective communicator, you need to be the one speaking 95% of the time. It's actually the opposite of that. To be an effective communicator, you need to be the person who is interested in the other person and who is asking great questions to elicit certain responses. And so, really, that's what we need to focus on, kind of listening more to be effective rather than speaking all the time. And this is our goal. We don't want that whitewater rafting picture to be our communication. People getting bounced around, jostled all around, and it's maybe exciting sometimes, maybe it's scary sometimes. We want it to feel very smooth. And as you look at this, you can see these rocks have been smoothed out over time because of repetition, because of how many times and how consistently that water flows right on top of them. They started off as jagged rocks, now they're smooth. This is how we want people to feel our communication: smooth, comfortable, relaxed, and safe, really, because people will communicate with you more when they feel safe and secure. Now, I'm going to give you specific tools that you can start to use, like I said, today. And I really would positively challenge you to do so, because what else is the point of coming to these things? We can learn a lot, but it's a whole different story when you actually start to apply it. So the first tool that I want to teach you today is a tool I created called Lola. And I want you to write this down. It's an acronym here. And we'll get into Lola in a second here. But again, remember, think about it. The difference of effective and ineffective communication. Effective communication is actually when you stop talking and when you ask questions and listen. And the more interested you are, the more interesting you become. And so you don't have to, when you go to these listing appointments, when you're working with buyers on buyers consultations, you don't have to be the one that's trying to narrate the entire process. Make it a dialogue, make it comfortable, make it congruent, and you'll see how that becomes much more effective. When you're more interested, they'll be more interesting and interested in you as well. So, Lola, here we go, guys. I want you to write this down. It's an acronym, like I said, LOLA. So, the first L, and this is really a great effective communication tool, the first L stands for listen. If nothing else, take that away from this conversation that you need to start listening more. Because when you start to listen, not just who you're speaking to, but what they're saying, what people are saying around them, when you start to really listen, you're going to learn a lot more. And it's that simple. It sounds like, well, that's pretty straightforward, Steve. That's because it is. Like I said to start this conversation, you all know how to effectively communicate like a top producer. Sometimes we just need to be reminded of it. So we need to listen more. When we're having a conversation with someone, listen to actually learn. Don't listen to respond. This is something that's really common. People will hear the first part of the sentence, tune everything else out, and think, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to say to respond to this. That's not effective communication. That's simply answering. That almost feels very transactional. So listen. The second thing here is what we talked about. If we know that 93% of our communication is nonverbal, what is not spoken, we need to observe. We need to pay attention to what that person or what the situation is telling us without them saying anything. Think about it. When you go to an airport, does everybody look very calm and serene with a big smile on their face? No, of course not. They look stressed. Maybe you see someone running past you trying to get to their gate while it's being called for the last call before the doors close. So you want to observe and take context into this situation. You want to realize that if it's maybe a stressful situation, that person's going to be stressed. But what you want to make sure you're doing is when you go to a listing consultation, when you have a buyer's consultation in your office, that you're not making someone feel stressed, that you're not putting them on defense. You want to pay attention when you start to talk about compensation, when you start to talk about value proposition, when you start to talk about marketing and different strategies, observe how that person is responding because they're telling you everything you need to know. Mike Pappas says it all the time. And his dad used to say this all the time too. When it comes down to someone who's selling a property, the biggest way to know if they actually want to sell is to theoretically rip open their shirt and see if they have an M emblazoned on them for motivated. So you want to be observing this person. Are they actually motivated to take action? Do they really want to sell? Do they really want to buy? When we're talking about, the decision-making time, do they lean back? Are they upset? What happens? So just start to observe the situations around you. And that's how you will then look at the second L, you'll learn. It's great again to come to these sessions, to go to seminars. We can learn so much, but if we don't do anything with that knowledge, we're wasting our time. It's that frank. And so what you want to think about is this A, this ties it all together, is apply. So you want to apply what you're learning. When you start to, if Joni Richardson and I are having a conversation, right? I'm paying attention to what she's saying. Is she very strict and serious and stern when she talks? Is she lighter? Is she very professional? I'm listening, I'm observing, I'm paying attention to those things. I'm then applying it. So the next time that we have a conversation, I know how we can make the conversation more comfortable. Now you can do that with anybody. And that's what you really should be doing. When you're making calls, what do most people do? They don't listen at all. When you make calls, you just slam down a script to that person. That tunes them right out. So you want to be able to really, even on a phone call, listen, observe what's being said. You won't be able to see them necessarily, but you'll hear a tone. You'll really start to learn from that. Then when you meet them in person, all the same principles apply. But think about Lola. The next time that you're thinking, okay, I'm going to make some calls or I have a listing consultation scheduled today at 12 p.m. I'm going in for it. Okay, listen to them, observe the situation, learn about their past experiences, learn about how they're feeling about the market right now, what their actual goals are, then start to apply those things, right? So it's really simple. It's really straightforward. And that's the great thing about being an effective communicator. You don't need to learn the perfect script. You don't need to say a certain word in a certain cadence at a certain tonality, certain pace. It's just about listening, observing, learning, and applying what you're doing, right? Now, here's what I want you to take a note of as well. There's 4 C's to pay attention to when it comes down to communicating effectively, okay? The first one here is clarity. This is so important. If you're going to a listing consultation and you have not done your due diligence, you have not prepared for it, do you think you're going to be able to deliver a clear message to that seller? Definitely not. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to be kind of jagged. It's going to feel like, if you look at the background, this whitewater raft. where it's getting sloshed all around. So we need to have clarity, first of all, as to, okay, what is the goal? What is the purpose of this conversation? Is it I'm at a networking event and I'm here just to build rapport, to build some connections? I'm not trying to sell anybody a house today, but what's the clarity that I have on my actual messaging and on the situation? It's so important to start there because a lot of people don't. And we know in marketing, if you try to talk to everybody, you're not going to connect with anybody. So this is about connecting. This is about slowing down to speed up, actually. So am I clear on the purpose of this conversation? Am I clear on their wants, needs, and desires? Number two is concise. This means get to the point, right? We've all talked to people that take a paragraph to say what could be said in a sentence. And sometimes if you're in a rush, you're like, man, I don't want to be rude right now, but I cannot keep listening to this because I got to go. And they just keep going on and on and on. You never want to have a prospect or a customer feel that way when they're working with you. You want to use data. You want to be straight to the point. You want to be direct. You want to be clear and you want to be concise. Now, being concise and being direct is not a bad thing. A lot of people think I can't be direct because it's going to come off as rude. It's not. People appreciate it. Now, don't be rude, obviously. There's a difference, but be direct, be concise, get to the point, and people appreciate it because you're respecting their time and you're respecting your own time. Number three here is really important. It's consistent. Okay. Consistency is key. Put a star next to this word. Think about it. If you got on to a training session with us today, talking about communication, and then next week we were talking about baseball, you'd be like, what is going on? I think I got the wrong Zoom link. Like, this is not the same because it's inconsistent. And guess what happens when your messaging, when your communication to your customers, to the marketplace, to prospects is inconsistent, you break trust. And you have to have trust in order to service, in order to educate, in order to add value. And so what you have to realize is that in your actual social media marketing, what's the messaging there? On my Kai's website, what's the messaging there? On my Forbes Global Properties website, what's the messaging there? On my Luxury Portfolio International website, what's the messaging? When someone meets me in person, what is my messaging? Is it consistent across all those platforms? Because if it's not, we're not going to have that identity to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. We're going to get grouped in to the pool where everybody else says, hey, I can help you buy or sell, but that's not very unique. You want to find what is my unique value? What is my unique message? And how can I consistently deliver on that? When you do it, all of a sudden people start to come up to you and recognize you and say, hey, I think I've been to this, or I think I saw your video on that. But consistency is absolutely key. Remember, in order to make a decision, people need confidence. The only way that someone can have confidence is if they built trust with you through education and value. And the way you do that is by consistently educating, consistently saying the same messaging, providing your brand image the same way. Stay consistent so people can trust you and your brand. Now, the last one here, C4, is complete. This is so important because what happens so much today, think about it. We're in June 2025. There's a lot happening. There's always text messages pinging off on people's phones. There's emails. There's social media messages. There's all kinds of distractions. And so what happens is people will usually get little pieces of information, little bits here, little bits there, but it doesn't really feel complete because a lot of people think they're so busy and in such a rush that I can't take the time to really understand this full conversation. So what you want to ensure you're doing every single time that you're connecting with a prospect, a current customer, a past customer, you want to follow these first three C's: clarity, consistency, and being concise. And then you want to make sure that your messaging and that conversation and that interaction leaves that other person feeling complete. It feels like, hey, we talked about our families and we had a great conversation about that. And that made me feel great today. That's a complete conversation. If you're following up with their sphere of influence, that may be all you needed to do today for them. It doesn't always have to be you ready to buy or sell. You ready to buy or sell. That's just selling. That's not adding any value. So you want to make sure that anybody you're speaking to does not leave a conversation scratching their head saying, what did we just talk about? Like, I know we talked a little bit about the market, but I don't understand what they said. They got either super technical with me or they didn't really say anything. They just kind of talked around the point. Like, I didn't leave there with any more value. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to these four C's when it comes down to effective communication. Our top producers, they're clear on their value. They're clear on the way that they can articulate that value to the marketplace. They're concise. They get to the point. They're not rude, but they're direct and they're professional. And that's what people appreciate. And they're consistent in their messaging. Look at a guy like Billy Nash. Go on his Instagram right now. He is consistently posting about luxury real estate around the globe. And that's his brand. That's consistent. Then we want to make sure our messaging is complete. We want to make sure that if someone asks us, how's the market? We're not just giving a surface level answer of like, oh, it's great. We want to be able to qualify. We want to be really educated so we know how to educate and we know how to add value. So just type in C4 in the chat if one of these four resonated with you or if all four did. But this is why, again, I said earlier, small fine tuning adjustments. When you think about your communication, it's not like you have to go and relearn how to study a script and re-communicate. No, it's just tuning things. It's making small little tweaks. Awesome. I can see a lot of C4 in the chat there. That's a good sign. So we're all together here, guys. So as we move forward now, this is really important. It's really important because we're starting to dive into the psychology and understanding of human beings. Because if you didn't know it, that's who you're doing business with, other human beings. And so VACOG, I want you to write this down. I did not create this because these are five human senses. All right. But what I do want us to think about is, again, your communication right now. This is what I need you to realize. You're here about different strategies, talking about a lot of different things, micro adjustments, little fine tuned adjustments, not huge shifts. Okay. So don't stress yourself out. Don't hear everything we're saying today and say, oh my gosh, I got to re look at everything I'm doing. No, you just need to make small adjustments. But here's what I want you to tune into, and I want you to write down VACOG, VAKOG. So these are the five main senses that every single human being has. Visual, right? It's how we see. Auditory, how you hear. Kinesthetic, it's kind of like hands on. Olfactory and gustatory, that's your sense of smell and your sense of taste. Now, this is so important because we have to realize and take a note of this. 65% of human beings, 65% are visual learners. 65% are visual learners. If you couldn't tell by these presentations, I'm a visual learner. So that's how I like to teach as well. But what that means, and this is what I need you to take a note of, this is so critically important. If we know that 65% of human beings are visual learners, what do most salespeople do? Most salespeople just talk at you. Most salespeople try to get you on a phone call, try to one call close you, try to schedule the appointment there. And it's great if you can do that. But realize the majority of people you're speaking to feel like they're being sold. And here's what I want you to take a note of. In 2025 and every year beyond, here's what your prospects are thinking to themselves, whether they know it or not. If I am being told, I feel like I'm being sold. I'll say that again, write that down. If I am being told, I feel like I'm being sold. Now, what does that mean? If I'm telling you, here's why I'm the best, here's why Kai's are the best, here's why you should list with me. If I'm just telling you, you've quickly tuned me out because, like, gosh, this is just not a pitch. This is what everybody experiences. Think about when you go to a car dealership. You're being told the pricing, the rates, the this, the that. Yeah, you're seeing the car, but they're just trying to sell you. And it's uncomfortable for everybody because most people are visual learners. Most people want to understand, okay, where are we in this process, especially in real estate, where a very small percentage of people have an idea of how the process works. Most of your customers, current or future, don't know how the real estate process works. That's why you're the value add as a professional for them. So if I'm being told, I feel like I'm being sold. Now, if we flip the script, and this is what I want you to focus on, guys. If I am being shown, I feel as though I'm being served. I'll say that again. If I am being shown, I feel as though I'm being served. What does that mean? A beautiful example of this is our Kai's Buyer's Guide. If you've been to any of our buyer broker trainings, I walk you through the 28-page buyer's guide, and literally every single page in that book has tremendous value as long as you know what is there and how to articulate it. And the reason why this is so important is because with buyer brokerage and everything that's happened, people might be confused. They may not know what's going on. They may not know the process, the questions to ask to get the answers they're curious on. So when you give them a guide and you're walking me through the guide page by page and you're showing me the process, you feel like you're being served. You feel like you're being educated. You feel as though, oh, he's got value and he's showing me the process. I have more confidence in this. Therefore, it's easier for me to make a decision. That's the goal. So what you want to think about is, okay, if we know we're not just communicating to one sense, but to all senses when we are actually speaking with a human being, we want to start to learn and understand. When I have a new seller, okay, are they more visual? Do they want to constantly see things from List Track or Lux Analytics every single week that is showing them the data? Do they want me to get that data, but call them and walk them through it because they're more auditory? They want to hear about what's going on. Are they more kinesthetic where they want me to send it, or they want me to print it out and bring something to them every week as an update so they can have it in their hands and feel tangibly part of the process. All of this matters. And what happens so often is that we're moving so fast, we so quickly forget this. And we forget to tailor our process to the preferred communication styles and learning styles of our ideal audience. And imagine if you did that. Imagine if you tuned in and realized, okay, this person's more auditory. They want me to be explaining things to them. They want to hear what's going on. Then they kind of process on their own. Then they call me back. We have another conversation. That's their preferred method of communication. Boom. Every single update, I'm calling them and then I'm going to send them a follow-up email. If you don't know that and you're just sending them email after email after email and you're never getting on a call, you're losing that trust. You're losing that connection. If they're the opposite and they're more visual, but you're calling them with updates and you're never sending them anything, we're losing that trust because we're adding friction to the process. So just think about this and start to think, okay, with my current customers, if I were to identify their preferred method of communication, what would that be right now? Have I ever asked them? Have I ever even thought about that? Or have I always just kind of said, well, this is how I like to communicate, so that's how I communicate with them? We want to tailor the process to them. We want to personalize the process. That will help you really enhance these conversations and your communication with them. This is what our top producers do all the time. And they can pick it up so quickly because they've done it so many times, or they will actually just ask. And they have the confidence in themselves to ask, hey, do you prefer emails, text messages, phone calls, Zoom calls? How would you like your communication? How would you like me to send you updates? Imagine if you asked your customers that. Many of you, I'm sure, do. But if you're not, maybe that's a note to take down and say, okay, I'm going to call them up today. I'm going to ask just so we're on the same page. They're going to appreciate it, if nonetheless. It could be the way you're already communicating with them, but it shows them you're thinking of me. You want my process to be smooth and comfortable. I appreciate that. Okay. Now, the next tool to write down, I didn't create this one either. This was the first communication tool that I ever learned from my first mentor in real estate up in Maine. And she said, Steve, anytime that you're speaking with someone, right? It could be at a networking event, could be at a listing consultation, anywhere where you don't actually know the person yet, think about forward. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, F stands for family, O stands for occupation, R stands for recreation, and the D stands for dreams slash desires. And what that means is in every conversation, you can think about these four letters and kind of pull out questions to ask the other person based on one of these four subjects. And think about it. Where do conversations naturally start? They start off and they say, hey, I'm Steve Merrill. What's your name? Oh, it's Jody Richardson, right? We're having a conversation. What's the first question that person's probably going to ask you, or you're going to ask them? Hey, what do you do for work? Why do we go there? Because it's such an easy, comfortable, safe question that we've been asked 1,000 times and others have been asked. So it's not very personal. It's not like, hey, how many kids do you have? Where do you live? It's not like that. It's just like, hey, we're starting off with occupation. So think about Ford. You've just started off with, oh, perfect. You're already in the groove. Now they're going to tell you what they do. Be interested. Ask more about that because eventually they're going to ask you, oh, what do you do for work? And then that leads you in. That's a slight open door. Doesn't mean, hey, I'm in real estate and do you need to buy or sell? Don't pitch them, educate them, and then ask them. Hey, so it sounds like you're in banking. Like, wow, that must keep you super busy. If you ever have free time, Joni, what do you do for fun around here? So now we've shifted down to recreation. And you can see just by kind of thinking about, okay, we're talking about occupation. Now we could go recreation. We could go dreams, desires. We could go family if that comes up naturally. Could go sports because that's recreation. Could go the beach. Could go paddle boarding, surfing. That's all in here. And so just think about this tool and think, okay, cool. I can kind of alternate through these. And when you ask questions based on these topics, you'll learn a lot about this person. And they will also leave the conversation feeling better than they did before because of the fact nobody else cares. It is that simple. And it sounds rough, but ask anybody. You know it. Look at the next time you check out of the grocery store. They're barely making eye contact with you. They don't really care how your day's going. They could ask you, hey, how's your day going? You could say terrible. And they say, oh, that's nice. Because it's just automated. It's transactional to them. They don't really care. Not their fault. They're just seeing so many people every day. But as a real estate professional, not an agent, you're a real estate professional with the Kai's company, you have the opportunity to change that and to be the person who differentiates himself because you're actually curious. You're asking questions. You're listening. You're asking more questions. You're feeling things out. It's really an effective way to get to know someone and build rapport. Be interested in them. Okay. Now, this next one here, again, is really important. And this is not a tool, but this is more so just for life to think about. We're talking about communication and we're focusing heavily on external communication. What do we say to customers? How do we ask the right questions? But what you have to understand, it does not matter the external questions, the external strategies that you have, if your internal communication right now is negative, if it's muddy, if it's not helping you. If you wake up in the morning and it's discouraging thoughts, it's anxious thoughts, it's self-deprecating thoughts, how can you expect to show up and have conversations with anybody else effectively? You can't. And the first person we need to be thinking of and taking care of every single day is ourselves. And most people won't because they think it's selfish, but it's not. What's more selfish is to be deprecating to yourself and is to take away that energy because you're not going to be able to grow your business effectively. You're not going to be able to show up for yourself or your family as effectively as you can. So we have to make sure right now on this call, how am I treating myself? What's that internal communication? Because if the internal communication is negative, the external communication is going to be negative, whether through your tonality, through your body language, or through your actual spoken word. So we've got to make sure internally, what am I saying to myself? What am I thinking to myself? What am I consuming? What am I putting in here? Because that's dedicating and directing a lot of what I'm saying externally. Okay. So something to think about. Now, here's what I also want you to tune into. We talked about the 4 C's of communication earlier. And think about it. These things, VACOG, so senses, 5 human senses, forward, these are things I'm sure you're already tuned into just naturally because you're communicating with other people, other human beings. And so this is naturally built into you. But now I want us to dive in a little bit deeper. And the first word I want you to write down with these 2 new C's that I'm introducing to you is connect. This is so important, so important. You have to understand that when you're at a networking event, when you're sitting down with a buyer for a buyer's consultation, when you're sitting down or going through a tour with a seller for a listing consultation, you need to connect with them. Do not try to sell them because they will smell your commission breath from a mile away and it'll kill the deal. Because remember, you're not a real estate agent, you're a real estate professional. And professionals know the first thing they need to do in order to connect is to be authentic. If anybody's told you in a sales training or whatever it may be, hey, change your identity and try to act like this person, mirror that person, forget all that. At least in this hour, forget that. You need to be yourself. Double down on who you are. If you're funny, be funny. If you're kind and very soft spoken, be that for that person. Be yourself. Don't try to be anything else because they're going to see right through that. The second thing here with connection is get to know. NO. And this is so important because a lot of people in sales training and marketing training and psychology, they've trained in the past, hey, if I can get this person to say some micro yeses, yes, it's a great day. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it's hot. Yes, kind of leading up through our conversation. So that way, when I ask for the close, they'll be in the habit of saying yes. I mean, you can try that, but people are pretty smart and people know, like, why is this guy asking me so many questions to get to say yes? Right. And it feels inauthentic. So what you can do, I learned this from an FBI negotiator named Chris Voss. He says, hey, get to know NO. And what that means is you could essentially say, let's say you've gone through a great house tour, you're at a listing consultation, and you're building great rapport with the potential customer, and you guys have talked about, the listing process and the marketing process. Instead of saying something like, hey, Joe, you ready to sign now? You can sign right here, right? Because that's more direct sales. Some people do that really well because they have confidence in themselves, and that's awesome. But if you don't yet have that, what you could say is almost flip the script and say, Joe, it's really been great getting to know you over the last hour. Thank you so much for the tour. Man, I love what you said about the newly renovated kitchen. And, as we've just gone over here, this is our process and what we've been doing for almost 100 years now at the Kai's company to effectively market and sell properties all throughout South Florida. Now, Joe, would it be a crazy idea if we started to provide this same service for you today? So right there, what you've done is you've gotten him. No, no, that wouldn't be a crazy idea. That's the goal. It's much less defensive. It's much more natural. Hey, would it be a crazy idea if you gave us the opportunity to do the same thing for you that we've done for literally thousands of other homeowners in the state of Florida? No, that wouldn't be crazy, right? They're not going to say, yeah, that'd be crazy, because then why did they waste the time listening to you and bring you through the whole thing, right? So it's an easier way to close, getting someone to say no, because they're thinking you're going to build them up to a yes and yeah. No, hey, would it be crazy, Joe, if we start off with this today? No, it wouldn't be crazy. I think this makes sense. And I feel confident in what you show me. Okay, that sounds great, Joe. So here's what we'll do. We'll sign right here, 3 copies, boom. So that's how another way you can approach it. Okay. Now, the next one here is get to know, KNOW. This is super important. We've been talking about this. You have to be an effective communicator, like all of our top producers, by getting to know this person. If I talk to top producers right now and I said, hey, give me 10 names of your customers, current customers today, they could write out 10 names. Then I'd say, tell me about each of these people. not just what they're interested in buying or selling, but tell me about them. They could tell me about them because they've taken time to get to know who are they, what are their interests, what are their psychographics, meaning their actual values, what they care about, how they make decisions, what they purchase, what they value, all those different things. The family situation is, who's playing soccer, who's playing football, what they got to know the family. They're part of this team now. If I did the same thing to you right now and I said, list out 10 of your customers, could you tell me who they are beyond, oh, they're this person at this address and they want to sell? You probably could. But if you're thinking, oh, maybe 8 out of 10 I can, okay, well, we've got an opportunity now. You need to get to know all of your customers. You need to get to know your prospects. You need to get to know your past customers. It's a relationship-based business, and that's what this means. Okay, now number 4 and 5, we talked a lot about this. Rapport. Rapport means when someone talks to you, they feel comfortable. They may not even know you, but they feel comfortable. They feel like there's respect there. They feel like this person's not trying to sell me something. It's not a bait and switch. And remember, the preconceived notion that a lot of people have with real estate agents, you're a professional, you're a real estate professional, not an agent, but a lot of people have the preconceived notion that, oh man, I'm waiting for the business card to come flying across with the handshake. And I'm waiting for them to press me on if I'm ready to buy or sell. And like, no, you want to hold them in rapport. You want to have respect. You want to hold them in a high regard. Meaning like, hey, I'm a professional. I view myself as such. I don't have commission breath. I don't need this deal right now. I want to serve you. I want to help you, but I'm not going to tell you whatever you want to hear to get the deal. Right. Then number 7 is so important as well. Number 7, number 3, they tie in together extremely well. The reason being is having a shared vision. Let's say you're working with a buyer, right? And they're looking in the Pembroke Pines area, and they told you their price is right around $500,000. And they told you that from the first time you've spoken to them on the phone, the first consultation you had with them, you got the buyer engagement letter signed. They're like, hey, I'm looking in Pines, right around $500,000. And if you, a week later, start to send them properties in Fort Lauderdale that are $1 million because they're nice properties, what do you think that's going to do? It's going to completely fracture the trust. You no longer have a shared vision. You're not listening to what I told you that I was interested in. Why are you sending me this? So, what you want to make sure with every single prospect, you have a shared vision. You're not pressuring them, but you understand what's that motivation if they want to sell? What's the motivation for wanting to buy? What's the time frame? Where are the locations? What's the price point? These are the basics, guys. But what happens often, especially when people are like managing listings, they start to think, oh, well, the seller doesn't want to lower the price, and I keep telling them they should, and this, and we've lost a shared vision. We no longer on the same page. It's not their fault. Take ownership and say, okay, did I educate them effectively from day one of a listing consultation that if we don't get a certain amount of showings and offers within the first 7 to 14 days, we were going to lower to X price? Okay, if I didn't, well, that's on me. Maybe we don't have a shared vision right now because I need to go back and connect and communicate with them effectively about where we are, not play the blame game. That's not going to get you anywhere. So you want to make sure from day one through closing and beyond that you have a shared vision with your customer. You've taken time to get to know them, you know, their wants, needs, desires, psychographics, and you're holding them in that high regard where you're actually keeping them top of mind and their actual vision top of mind. Write in the word connect in the chat if any of this is making sense, guys, because this is really important that we understand the importance of connecting to actually connect, to actually serve, to add value rather than just selling. Okay, awesome. I'm seeing connect come through. That's a good sign. Nobody's fallen asleep yet. That's good. All right, now the second one here that I want us to look at that. Alejandra put it in all caps. Let's go. The next one I want us to focus on here is collaborate. Okay, this is the same thing. This is the same thing. Connection and collaboration. If you want to grow your business, do those two things. Connect with people authentically and collaborate with them. Come in with zero agenda. This is the same deal as commission breath. If you go, and obviously a buyer's consultation, what's the purpose of that? It's to connect, it's to educate, and it's to get a buyer engagement letter signed. That's great. That's the goal. Have a goal. Understand the purpose of that. But from the second they sit down, you can't be sliding over the buyer engagement like, hey, you ready to sign? Hey, you ready to sign? Hey, it's going to be salesy. It's going to be uncomfortable. They don't know what to expect. Slow things down, educate them. Don't have an agenda. We're working with them on their timeline. It really comes down, just like Mike said, to their motivation. So what is it? Now you can see equal or greater than. What this means, and this is so important to think about this, we talked about this a little bit earlier, in every single conversation you have with anybody, I don't care if this is personal, professional, whatever, the goal of ours is to leave that person feeling either the same way they did before they came into the conversation or feeling better. The same way or feeling better. And ideally, it's that they feel better. Think about it. If you go to a listing consultation, that seller has questions, concerns, they have certain goals for pricing, timelines. They've probably also interviewed other agents. It's a good thing you're a real estate professional because when you come in, you're not just sliding over a listing agreement saying, hey, sign here. You're here to connect. You're here to actually build rapport. You're here to show them that you care because you do. And you want them leaving that consultation after signing a listing agreement saying, man, I feel really great in the decision we just made. That's our goal. Okay. Now, negotiate and collaborate. A lot of people think negotiation is like, oh man, I got to be in like the detective room with the lights and it's intense and it's going to be cutthroat and hardcore. It's only going to feel that way if that's what you think about it. Okay. Negotiation is really just the bottom word, collaboration. Meaning, okay, let's say you're representing a buyer. You make an offer. One of three things is going to happen. It's going to get accepted, rejected, or countered. Here's how I'm going to negotiate on behalf of my customer in each of those ways. So it's not about high stakes, adding tremendous amounts of stress, what I call artificial stress for no reason. It's about knowing what this person cares about and knowing what they want you to negotiate on their behalf for and doing as such and educating the customer on what you're doing for them. A lot of times, and again, you're not a real estate agent, you're a real estate professional. A lot of real estate agents will say, I'm a master negotiator. Does anybody have any idea what that means? Not a chance. Does it sound cool? Maybe, but most people are like, I don't know what that means. Is there any substance in that? So be prepared to explain to your seller or to your buyer how you negotiate and how you plan to handle certain situations. That's going to paint a picture for them. That's going to help them understand service you provide, the level of professional you are, and what you'll do for them. So put down collaborate, guys, in the chat if that made sense. Because if you think about it, we've talked about communication. Remember, 93% of communication is nonverbal. And our top producers, they live by this. They're always reading the situation. You're doing this as well, whether you're a top producer yet or not. The top producer mindset starts right here. It's not about just seeing a number on a piece of paper. Okay. So we have to realize 93% of communication is nonverbal, 7% is verbal. And we really have to focus on connecting, collaborating, adding value, and getting to know that other person. So, again, for anybody who jumped in a little bit after, we've got whitewater rafting as our background because this boat in the front is how most people feel with communication. They're getting sloshed around. It's uncomfortable. It's hard to get through. So we want to make sure that our communication is smooth, it's confident, and it's direct. Direct does not mean rude. All right. Now, as you can see here, guys, we have these three mountain peaks. And this is important to realize because what I want you to write down as a word is the word elevation. Elevation. When it comes to your communication, you need to be elevated. What does that mean? Does that mean you have to speak in a high tonality and do 15 jumping jacks before you get on a call? No, not necessarily. If that's your thing and that's what helps you get physiologically aligned, do your thing. But if not, what this means is it's your tonality of voice in an authentic way. It's your pacing. It's your structure. It's your understanding of what you're about to do. If I got on a Zoom call and was like, hey guys, today I'm going to talk about communication. It's going to be pretty good. Think you'll enjoy it. You'd be like, am I in the right spot? Is this right? Because my elevation is so low. And this is where most people are operating out every single day, either internally up here or their communication. Try to call a restaurant today and book a reservation. I did that recently and it sounded like I woke the guy up on the other side of the phone. It's his job to answer the call and to book the reservation. It sounded like I woke him up. And so you want to make sure people are calling you. If you're calling people, if you're meeting people in person, if you're sending a text message, that it's authentic, but that it has high elevation. Because here's what elevation can do. Let's say, and you can see, I'm phenomenal at drawing here, right? So as you can see with our frowny faces, if this right here is a prospect or customer, and they're having a bad day, a rough situation just happened, or whatever the case is, and they are talking to you, and you match that low elevation, how's everybody going to feel? They're going to feel bad, or even worse. This is the exact opposite of what we want to have. But a lot of people in their personal lives get stuck right here because misery loves company. And maybe you have some friends or family members who love to bring that drama around you and they look for you to feed off of it as well. And then you end the conversation like, man, I don't feel any better than I did beforehand. That's not what we want to be around. And that's not how we want people to feel when we communicate with them. The next one here is let's say that prospect or customer calls us and or interacts with us and they're kind of upset about something. But we are professional problem solvers. We're real estate professionals and we come in with high elevation. Not like, hey, Joe, what's up? Oh, man, that conversation and that situation sounds really tough. Well, hope you're having a great day. Like, you don't want to be inauthentic, but you want to have high elevation where it's, okay, I hear what you're saying, Joe. All right. We can solve this. Here's how. Here's what we're going to do to get through it. What do you think that's going to do to his or her feeling? It's going to make them kind of come to a baseline because you've actually elevated them, their feeling about what's ever happening. If you match them, it's going to be a much harder situation. Now, what about this next one here? If they interact with you and they're kind of at a baseline, they're not up, they're not down, but they're kind of like, eh, and you have that positive tonality and you're here to solve problems and you're here to educate them on what we're doing to move forward. And hey, maybe we didn't get the offers that we were hoping to, but here's what the data is telling us. And here's what I think we can do to move forward. How do you want to make that decision to move forward? That's going to help. That's going to bring them up. They're going to realize, okay, that's right. That's why I'm working with this person because you guys know, as a real estate professional, you're also a psychologist. You do a lot of emotional kind of regulation and conversation. And so you just want to make sure too that you're taking care of yourself so you're ready for those conversations because it's going to happen. It's either the biggest purchase or sometimes the biggest sale of somebody's life. So realize that you do this often. They do it once every 10 years, maybe. And so they're going to have different emotions, and that's okay. As a real estate professional, we expect that. But here's what we're going to do to make sure moving forward that everything's clear. And so then the last one here, what if this person calls you? And I'm sure you guys have had this call you or they interact with you and they're stressed out and maybe some drastic thinking or some anxious thoughts or whatever the case is. And you're not inauthentic, like, hey, just cheer up, buddy. But you're hearing them out. You're being real. You're taking notes of what they're saying. You're addressing each point. You're making sure that they realize, hey, I'm with you. I understand why you're stressed out. I think that's valid. And then here's what we're going to do to move forward. Because what you never want to do is just match someone's emotion and stay there. Because all you're doing is staying right there. And especially in real estate, as a real estate professional, they're looking for you to give answers. They're looking for you to be guiding them through this process and helping them understand the next steps. Because if you're not, they're going to go look for someone who will. And so it's a very basic illustration, quite literally from my drawings. But what you want to understand is that these are small, nuanced changes. It's the way that you actually posture yourself. If you're sitting in a chair, where are your shoulders? Where's your chin? Where's your head? Because when you make those calls, if you're doing cold calls today, that person on the other side of that phone is going to hear if you're slumped over, if you're lethargic, if you're not actually excited. You might be a little nervous, and that might give some excitement. But if you're sitting up and you've got that positive tonality and a high elevation, that's going to be heard. And guess what? In a post-pandemic society, people are craving connection now more than ever. And they want to work with someone and even have conversations with someone who is positive, who is empowering, who is a professional, because it's hard to find today. And so that's why I'm drilling so much on the fact that you are a real estate professional. You have all these amazing tools, an amazing brokerage, an amazing concierge, an amazing group of managers. So be elevated when you're speaking, have pride, be excited about what you're doing. Realize that, hey, you're not in control of the interest rates. You're not in control of the headlines in the newspaper. That's all out of your control, but that could be stressing out other people. But you are going to be that professional problem solver with high elevation. So just put in the word elevation in the chat, if that makes sense, because again, it's a silly illustration of it here, but it really is important because one of my mentors, again, he was a state trooper and he told me, he's like, Steve, when you get in real estate, just realize people are going to be all over the place with their emotions. You just need to be like this: calm, cool, and collected, professional problem solver, hearing them out, understanding them, not diminishing what they're feeling or thinking, but making sure that you're not matching them. And you're, oh my gosh, yeah, I don't know why the offer fell through either. This is so bad. What? That's not going to help anything. Not going to help anything. And based on all the elevation that you guys just put in the chat there, I know this strikes a chord because this is what we do every day. This is what you guys do every single day. And that's why a lot of people don't understand how you can be a real estate professional, but you guys do because you have empathy. You are sincere with these people. You care enough to care for them. And that's how you can really grow your business. Our top producers, again, I could ask them, tell me about each of these 10 people. Tell me about their families. They'd be able to tell me because they care. So they know when the father calls them or the mother calls them and they're upset about whatever happens, there's all kinds of life happening around them as well that could be stressing out that interaction. They're not going to get upset at them. They're not going to make the customer wrong. They're going to hear them out and they're going to be that professional problem solver. That's why it's so important to do this. Okay. Now, what we're going to do here is talk a little bit about some body language. Okay. Because this probably today, guys, will be broken up into a two-part section because we have a whole lot more to get through. We only have 15 minutes. But again, you can tell how passionate I am about this because this stuff matters. This is the intangibles that can quickly become tangible. If you focus on your communication, if you focus on studying body language, You'll be able to connect, build rapport, and add value to people way faster than if you're just reading off a script and trying to hammer things down and seeing if someone will give you an appointment. Okay. So here's my little quiz for you guys. We're going to talk about body language. I want you to tell me in the chat, what is the most honest part of a human body? Type it in the chat. The answer is on this somewhere. What is the most honest part of the human body? Is it the eyes, the head, the face, the ears, the feet, the nose, the arms, the legs, hands, neck, shoulders? What is it? All right, I'm seeing some in the chat come through. We see, we have eyes, legs, eyes with a question mark, ears, eyes, face, heart. That's nice, Yvette. Shoulders, arms, face. So a lot of people think, the majority of people think the eyes. And that's probably because we've all heard that the eyes are the gateway to the soul. And that's a great guess, a great answer, because the eyes are very telling. You can tell if someone is looking you in the eyes, what that means, if their eyes are open, if they're squinted. There's a lot. If people aren't making eye contact with you, what's hard to believe sometimes, but it's true. I learned this from an FBI body language expert. The most honest part of the human body are the feet. The feet, believe it or not. Think about this. If you and I right now are standing in your Kai's office, where are our feet pointed at? They're at each other. And let's say we're having a serious conversation, right? You're asking me something, we're talking about, and it's serious, it's more private, right? Both of our feet are going to be pointed right at each other because that's subconsciously telling every other human in the area, you're not welcome to join into this conversation. Okay. Now, a lot of the other parts of your body language will be telling that too. But the feet is where it all starts. Now, think about it. If you and I are talking about let's say a baseball game or the NBA basketball game that happened last night, right? Not too serious. Other people could join in if they wanted to. One of our feet will naturally be pointed at each other because that's a sign of respect and rapport that is just subconsciously happening. It's pointed at each other. The other one is going to be slightly pointed out to an angle. It doesn't mean like a 45-degree angle, your foot's cranked, but it's going to be slightly pointed out. And that's because we're subconsciously telling other humans in the office, hey, if you want to come join this conversation, you're welcome to. It's not serious. It's not a private conversation. So it's weird. You're not going to go into a listing consultation and be staring at the shoes of the homeowner that's giving you the tour, right? But it's just something to kind of keep in mind. But all these things that you guys are saying is also correct. The eyes, extremely, extremely telling. They're the gateway to the soul. The head and face, you can read so much from that. Where the ears are, the nose, is it relaxed? Is it scrunched? The legs, all these things are true. But it's just what matters is what I told you guys earlier. You already know these things. Okay, this is not breakthrough information for you. The feet part might have been, because when I learned that too, I was like, what? But it's true. It's weird, but it's true. But what I want you to pay attention to is you already know how to read people. You already know when someone's upset, even if they haven't said anything. If they're not crying, you know when they're tense. You know when they're happy. You know when they're stressed because you can read human language, body language. So what I'm going to do on this next screen, guys, I'm going to put a few people up on the screen. And I'm going to want you to tell me in the chat how that person is feeling. Okay. So this is called respect in gateways. Now, what we're going to do, like I said, is I'm going to show you someone and you're going to tell me in the chat how that person's feeling. But respect in gateways is everything you guys have been talking about. It's understanding, does this person feel respected right now? Do I feel respected right now? Do I feel like there's a gateway for conversation? Should we continue this conversation or not? It's all different cues that you're getting at all different levels from, again, their tonality, what they're saying, but really what they're not saying and what their body language is telling you. So you guys can see we have three people here. We're going to focus only on this gentleman with the tie right now. In the chat, type in, please, and tell me how this guy is feeling. Tell me about this person. Okay. How's the guy with the red tie feeling? What is he doing? What's going on? I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. So you tell me, what is this person doing? How are they feeling? What's going on? All right. We have a powerful, we have an anxious, we have a confident. Okay. So powerful, anxious, confident, getting ready. They feel important, confident, uninterested, could be feeling tense. Tense again came through. Okay, so we have an interesting mix up of like confidence or being tense. And how can you guys tell that? Put in the chat. Why do you think he's confident right now? Why do you think he could be tense? What told you that? All right, here we'll jump back into it. The presentation bumped us out. But what told you that from this guy right here? What told you? Right? He's well dressed, his posture because of the arms. Okay. So these are all interesting points. Being well dressed. That's speaking something, right? That's telling the world something about you, how you present yourself, how you feel about yourself. His posture, he's not slouched over. His arms, right? They're at a crease. Peaceful demeanor, someone says. He's adjusting something that feels you need to be corrected. Could be tense. Okay, so these are very interesting points you guys are bringing up. So if you start from the top and go down, always look at the person's forehead. In this case, this guy's forehead is not scrunched. So if it's like an inquisitive situation, if you're curious about something, sometimes you'll kind of either scrouch it down or kind of up, right? And you'll have creases. It's very smooth, very calm. Look at the eyebrows. They're not down. They're not like pushed down. They're not up, kind of curious. They're very calm. Look at the nose. It's not scrunched. Look at the cheeks. Look at the mouth. Everything on the face, it's relaxed. Now, look at the shoulders. They're not up. They're not very tense looking. They're kind of more baseline. Then you can look at what he's wearing. That tells you something. Then you can look, he's doing what is called pruning, how he's adjusting his sleeve. If you've ever seen anybody when they sit down or they talk to you, whatever, if they're wearing a tie or anything, and they sit down and the first thing they do is kind of adjust the tie, or in this guy's case, he's kind of adjusting his sleeves, that's known as pruning. And that's a subconscious thing that human beings do to make themselves appear in the best way as possible for the person they're about to go see or for the event they're about to go into. So they're trying to position themselves as such. So to me, this person looks confident. Looks like he means business, serious. It's not like a much of a smile there, but it's more serious. Now, how about this guy in the middle? How about this guy in the middle on the right hand side with the white shirt? Tell me about this guy. How's he feeling? Is he happy? Is he sad? Is he stressed? Tell me about this guy in the middle here with a white shirt. All right, we have happy and welcoming. He's happy, happy go lucky. How can you guys tell that? I thought he was mad. I'm seeing a lot of happy. I see a Saturday morning face. That's funny. Relaxed, happy. He's a nice guy. How do you guys know that? We're not talking to him. We don't know how he's feeling. How do you know? What's telling you this right now? Okay, he's got a smile, genuine smile. That's a good one, Alex. The genuine smile. People know if it's a forced smile or if it's a genuine smile. It's a genuine smile. It's warm. It's welcoming. So we're all saying the smile. We're saying what he's wearing, the shirt, right? It's not a suit and tie. It's more relaxed. Then, if you look again, look at the forehead, smooth, comfortable. Look at the eyebrows, slightly up now because of the smile. The eyes, they're not tense, they're comfortable. The cheeks are dimpled here because he's smiling, like you're saying. The teeth, now some people show teeth when they're not, like think about an animal. When they're gritting teeth, that's not an ideal thing, but he's smiling. It's a genuine smile, like Alex noted. Shoulders are down, comfortable. So that person probably is pretty happy. Again, this is not breaking ground. You guys know when someone's smiling and it looks authentic versus when it's not. But this is what's important. When you're talking to someone in a listing consultation, if they're in one of these two scenarios, how are we handling it? Because you're going to talk to these two people differently. This one on the left is more serious. This one's more welcoming, warm, excited that you're there. So how am I going to make sure that I'm tailoring my approach to each? Not changing what I'm saying, changing who I am, but just, okay, maybe the guy on the left with a tie, maybe he's more direct. Maybe he wants me to get to the point faster. Maybe this guy on the right, more comfortable, not as stressed out with time. Okay, cool. Now I know how to tailor that, right? So how about this next one? How is she feeling? Hopefully you don't see someone with an attitude like this on your listing consultation, buyer's consultation, but you never know. How is she feeling? Upset. How can you tell, Jorge? How can you tell that she's upset? How do you guys know? We're not talking to her. We didn't ask her. Remember, only 7% of that is communication is actually verbal. So look at the forehead, exactly. Mad forehead. Yeah, it's tense. Look at the eyebrows. Look at the eyes. If you look at these two, look at the eyes of this woman and the eyes of the man. Different. The eyes of the woman are almost tense and down. The eyes of the man who's smiling are almost kind of up, it feels. Uncomfortable, upset. Yeah, the facial expression. Look at the lips. They're pursed. You don't see any teeth, but they're pursed. It's uncomfortable. The nose is slightly scrunched as well. You can tell the shoulders, the body's kind of more anxious and tight and stressed. So all things that you guys aced simply because you know other human beings. You know how to pay attention to other people. And that's because our brain has been conditioned for over 2 million years to say, is this person a threat or is this person safe? That's it. And so the reason we're doing this today is to say, okay, cool. So when we are making a phone call, who are we trying to talk to? What mood do we want to put people in? When we're at a networking event, when we're at a community event, when we're at a buyer's consultation, how do they feel when we first start talking to them? How do we want them to feel? Ideally, people will probably say like the middle, comfortable, calm, excited, happy, pleasant, like that's ideal. That's great. But if you get a call from someone, or if you're managing a listing for 3 months and the seller is giving you this kind of feeling, okay, all right, I could just add to it, make them feel more upset, make them feel more stressed, or I could say, okay, if this is how I anticipate they're going to feel, what can I do to make sure I have all the data, all the information? How do they like to be communicated with? Do they want to see all this? Maybe I should drive out there and give them a presentation in person. Do they want to email? Do they want me to call them and review it with them? So this all goes back to knowing your customer. Who are we dealing with? Now, again, these are just three general examples. There's all kinds of moods and expressions people have, but we really want to think, okay, how are people feeling right now? And how are my customers feeling right now? If they're feeling kind of like this over here, how can I get them to feel more comfortable? If they're feeling like this over here, a little bit more serious, how can I get them to feel more comfortable and educated? And again, maybe that's just how their personalities are, one of these three. It's not about you to change that, but it's about us to understand we're the real estate professional, and if we use market data and we understand what they could be feeling, we can usually help them as long as we're communicating effectively. And we're not here to try to put blame on them, make them wrong, tell them, hey, I told you the property wasn't going to sell for 650. I told you it was more 580, but you wouldn't listen to me 3 months ago. That's not going to work. That's not effective communication. And so, what we're going to do next week, guys, is we're going to dive into the next two key pieces of this conversation, because what our top producers do so well is they make sure everybody's involved in the deal. What does that mean? Well, this is a tool that I developed called the wagon wheel of communication. And what we're going to do when we go through this is we're going to identify where every single customer in every single deal that you have, whether it's a prospect customer or past customer, where they are, what their goals are, what are the internal factors, what are the external factors making this whole thing move forward or come to a stop, and what are we doing to make sure that we're involving their team. And that's really an important aspect. And that's what our top producers do. So we'll save that for next week. But I hope you enjoyed the first two core sections of this effective communication session, because I really enjoy it. And it's something that is so apparent to all of us because it's around us all the time. It's literally what we see. It's how we live. It's how we interact with people personally, professionally. And next week, we'll dive into that second step. And it's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of great information there. But I'm seeing in the chat you guys enjoyed it. So that's awesome. And thank you guys for playing full out too and typing in those answers and giving your feedback and all of that. That's what makes these a lot of fun and really engaging. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you're able to think about LOLA: listen, observe, learn, apply, that acronym, and start to use that today and throughout the whole week until our session next week. And watch how your communication will change. When you start to actually listen and you start to pay attention and ask them questions, when you're interested in them, you'll become very interesting. So I hope that helped. We'll send out the recording of this week. And if you need anything in the meantime, reach out to me, reach out to any of our managers. We've got an amazing team here with you, and we'll make sure to get everything you need. So until next time, guys, have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.